You have two choices, America, Trump's golden age, or California's communist dystopia. Blaze News The Mandate starts right now. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Jill Savage in Washington, D.C., joined by our lovely panel, Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson.
Another day in the neighborhood. It's good to be here.
And our D.C. politics editor, Chris Bedford.
It's been 25 long years.
It has been. It's been a long time for you. But let's go ahead and actually start the show off with some good news. It doesn't happen every day, but you know what? The Supreme Court has been uncharacteristically effective as of late. So yesterday, they ruled that Trump can fire hundreds of Department of Education employees, paving the way for the DOE's demise. Now, this builds off of other favorable rulings, like Trump when he was trying to go through and dismissing the injunction to get him with the federal judges. So are we actually trying to go through and get the golden age that we were promised? This feels like a completely different show than yesterday.
I mean, it's good to see the wins. The Supreme Court didn't really spend any time on it either. It's basically a one-paragraph decision of, yeah, this is granted, that's fine. To which Sotomayor, who's probably trying to get some of her street cred back after smacking down Ketanji Brown Jackson last week, wrote a 19-page dissent, just all about the rule of law in Congress and this and that. I think that's probably because the Supreme Court made its ruling much more clear last week when they issued a similar decision on layoffs. I think it was HHS, but that was the one where Ketanji Brown Jackson went nuts in her 14-page dissent, and you saw Sotomayor point out, like, listen, I know that you're angry about the restructuring plan, but there actually isn't a restructuring plan in this. So the administration is allowed to be in charge of its federal workforce. This is something that's actually been seriously contested for decades now in the United States, where Matt's a student of this or a professor of it. But the bureaucracy has been unanswerable and unmanageable for decades and supposedly the bureaucracy underneath the jurisdiction of the executive, but it seems to have been operating as a fourth branch of government. These are both good moves. Now, I do foresee some future trouble with the Department of Education plan, and that's just because it was established by Congress. Mm-hmm. And they sometimes, you'll see the Secretary, Linda McMahon, will step in it maybe and say, well, the plan is to shut it all down and eliminate it. Well, I'm not really allowed to do that. You can restructure, you can move things, you can shift things around. But the left's reaction to the whole thing is just hysterical. I was reading through the dissent, and it's basically students are going to be sexually assaulted if you lay off 500 employees from DOE, which is just psychotic. Like, children will go hungry if you lay off these people. And
people will die, Chris.
Everyone is going to die, Bill.
Well, and it's a lot more than that, because right now the plan is 1,400 people that they will get rid of for the workforce at the DOE.
Yeah, so what you're seeing is in these decisions is like the first round of president winning, you can get rid of some people. But it is a complicated issue because for, over a century, removal powers have really not been there for the president. So if you think about this, there's actually a healthy tension here, right? I mean, Congress appropriates money and creates these departments through law, and they have that's what they do. And then the executive is supposed to, be the CEO of these things. So there's always going to be a little tension there, because if the president disagrees with what Congress set up, right, he would want to thwart those departments or agencies or change them and make them go in a different direction. But obviously, as CEO, he has broad powers, or used to. And the idea is that what's really in question constitutionally for the court is whether the president can just remove everybody, whether he can hire and fire everybody.
An American CEO, if you will.
Yes. whether the president is actually CEO and can fire everyone, and that was the old spoils system where you won and you got all the old people out and you put all the new people in. And the bad part about that, people complained, was, well, these are all just political. They're all real political appointees. And so you set up a civil service system instead you can't fire people. They're going to be experts. They're going to be here over time. And so this has been going on in American history for a long time. So what's ultimately, like, we're going to see this be pushed, right, by the Trump administration more and more and more. So great, 1,300, 1,400 education department employees are going. We want to axe that department anyway. That's one where, less is more, get rid of them all. So you're slowly, like, cutting away at this thing, and the momentum is real. But at some point, you're going to run up against, A, can you really fire everybody? Is that power there? That's a Supreme Court case that needs to happen. And then B, for something like the Department of Education, aren't you ultimately thwarting the will of Congress, and you better pass a law to abolish it because it's established by law?
Now, do you think that this has staying power? The Democrats are saying, listen, if you do this to the Department of Education, it's not going to recover. This is going to take decades of the amount of damage that this will do to Democratic efforts to oversee and to run these schools. And by the way, I live in Northern Virginia, where Department of Education policies allowed and protected sexual assault and rape that was being committed by transgender students, and parents were being blocked out by local teachers unions and school boards. So the idea that what the left thinks that they're doing is just completely false, the opposite of true, actually. How quickly can they undo? Have we ever seen anything like this before, where they've actually had to come in and deal with a rollback on this level? Usually Democrats make massive gains when they're in administration. Republicans have to try and clean it up, tinkering around the edges. You can change some things about Obamacare, but you'll never get rid of it, most likely. I've never seen the shoe on the other foot in my whole life.
No, this is the problem with the federal government.
Yeah.
It only grows. You never take pieces or even chunks away from it. You can take little ones, Chris. You know this. They're never going to let you allow you to have a huge victory and be like, oh, you know what? We don't need this anymore. No, where's all the funding going to go?
People need to get paid.
They need to get paid. That's how this story plays out every time.
Yeah. So what it is interesting is unprecedented, really, because we've heard a lot of talk, right, for our whole life,
forever,
but we've never actually seen it happen. And the best part about this is the FAFO. I mean, F around and find out. The finding out part is where we'll see how far it goes, because what you're going to see are moments where in the courts for the firing, and when it comes to then, thwarting the will of Congress, which if they keep eroding these agencies, we'll get to that too. You're just going to see fights all along the way against administrative states. So really everyone on the right, I don't understand never Trumpers anymore. I mean, this is what the right wanted for, like, everyone wanted for decades.
They haven't made sense forever.
And you're getting it right now. So this is what the mandate's all about. And the question is, how far will this go? What will happen in these major battles? We haven't even seen the major, really, constitutional battles yet, or the Supreme Court jurisprudence battles. But what we're seeing is progress. And we have to say, I mean, what's HHS just got rid of a bunch of people. State Department just got rid of a bunch of people. Department of Education, they want to eradicate that for good reason. They got rid of a bunch of people. So we just went from Biden, right, who's a shadow president who doesn't exist as a person.
He's a hologram.
Yes. to all of a sudden an executive branch that's starting to, slap people around a little bit. And that's really interesting.
We had the Supreme Court. They came down with a 6-3 vote. We've been seeing some of these 6-3 votes go in our favor. I'm not used to this, Chris. What is going on with this?
It's strange, but I think one of the main things is the judges. This is all of these lawsuits have been a group of 19 states plus Washington D.C., and you get some unions and some school districts added on. That's the people who've been suing repeatedly, and they haven't had a lot of legal ground to stand on. It's just basically their whole legal argument, and case after case after case, is either I can see into the administration's heart, and I think they're doing this because they're racist and bad people, which is not a very good legal argument outside of California, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, where it gets to a certain place and the Supreme Court says, no, that ain't how it works. That's not how you do this. Or it's something like we saw from a Massachusetts judge recently, which is, hey, I know that the law says you can, but this doesn't feel right. This is not the vibes. We win.
Yeah.
We win. The law
doesn't feel right.
Yeah, democracy means liberals win. That's otherwise it's anti-democratic. Law and order means liberals win. No one's above the law means conservatives go to prison. It does not mean that no one's above the law. And no, we don't really need the law. The law exists to punish conservatives and to progress the revolution. So they're making dumb legal cases, like repeatedly, and this old idea of it's really, really, really embarrassing for a judge to get struck down by the Supreme Court seems to have just disappeared. They're Leon Jenkins or Leroy Jenkins in the whole thing. They're just charging straight into it, and they're getting slapped down over and over again without shame. And I actually expect that there's probably going to be a future for a lot of these judges when they get rid of aspects of the filibuster.
Yeah.
Because when Democrats get in, these lunatics are going to be rewarded for their suicide strikes against the Supreme Court, and they'll be promoted, which is a danger.
Well, there is money that is flowing all throughout this town. We've been talking about it here for the last few minutes, but one congressman can't seem to pay his rent on time. We'll talk about that next. Real quick before we get back to the show, we need to talk about the ranchers in this country. Don't let them close down because all the meat in the grocery stores is actually coming from overseas. We need to support American workers and American family farms. You've heard me say it before. 85% of the so-called grass-fed beef in stores is actually imported. That's why you need to look at goodranchers.com because we know that they sell 100% American meat that is absolutely born, raised, and harvested right here with local family farms. And it's summertime. There's nothing better than grilling with your friends and family. They have all the steaks and burgers and chicken and all that wild-caught seafood, and you'll be able to taste the difference. Every box supports American ranchers. So right now, if you subscribe, you'll get to have your free pick of meat for life. And you could choose between Wagyu burgers, hot dogs, bacon, or wings in every box. Just use the code Jill at checkout for an extra $40 off. It's goodranchers.com, code Jill. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. We talk about Representative Cory Mills on the show. If you're new here, well, there's a lot to catch up on. We have gone through all of his stolen valor accusations. There's some womanizing. There's some alleged assaults that have happened. There's a lot with his religion. And last night, the congressman became the talk of the town one more time, you guys, because not only does he live in a very nice, swanky penthouse here in the city, but we get word that he has amassed over $85,000 in unpaid rent. That comes out to just about $21,000 a month for his luxury DC penthouse. Chris, tell us about your luxury DC penthouse. Is this going for $21K a month?
Yeah, I actually like to live in houses where you can walk in the front door and not have to bump into people you don't know in the lobby of your own home. But some people like to spend over $20,000 a month on penthouses. The thing is, in order for a congressman to do that, they have to be rather independently wealthy. Mm-hmm. And I know from reading your coverage that he did well in arms sales, at least for a period of time, and different kinds of foreign contracts. There's allegations or suspicions that maybe there was even a marriage that was part of furthering those business goals. But since then, there's been some trouble on the home front. Accusations of multiple women in multiple states, as well as a wife who's still married to him. So this sort of thing is tough on a company. Did he actually? I mean, you're the one who knows everything about this. Did he actually divest from that business? What's paying him? Obviously, it's not.
Well, he says that he's divested, and then he says he's put it into a blind trust with a phone call with our Peter Giedel here. Back when we had our first conversations, we were actually in Washington, D.C. When that conversation happened. We were over in the White House for Media Row. And there's still a lot. He goes, guys, that was 4 years ago. How am I supposed to remember if my multi-million-dollar international arms company is going to be divested or in a blind trust? Now, when he went on Glenn Beck's podcast back in, I would say, like late October, early November, he knew the exact number of rounds that fit on a plane nose to tail. I remember it exactly. It was 2,202,975 or whatever
Those
it
are
was.
cool things
It's
to know.
But he remembered that number exactly, nose to tail on a plane.
Right.
But you can't tell me if you're divested or in a blind trust for the business that you're a part of that pays you all of this money so you can afford a penthouse for $21,000 roughly, and then a Florida house that he also rents that goes for $12,000 a month. So we're estimating here about $400K a year in rent, which of course is what all rich people would do. They wouldn't build up a real estate portfolio. Why would you do that?
Yeah, I recommend buying if you can.
Yeah.
If you have that kind of money.
Maybe, I mean, if he forgot that he didn't know whether it was divested or blind trust with which company and whatnot, I mean, maybe that's why he just forgot to pay his rent. Just doesn't remember the important things. But that doesn't seem very likely. It seems more likely that something very fishy is going on here. So what is that? I mean, this guy paid up front. Is that I've heard?
No,
that
he was
rumor.
trying to do that with the DC penthouse, I heard, because he's just not very good at paying his bills. Apparently here he's had, since his records from 2025, his records show 17 incidences of late fees. This comes from Roger Sullenberger, who used to be with the Daily Beast. And Cory Mills actually called Roger yesterday, and he was saying that he hadn't paid his rent because the online payment system is broken.
They don't evict you from a penthouse over a technical glitch on their website. At least, I mean, maybe they do. I've never lived in a penthouse, but it doesn't seem like the kind of service you're paying for at that sort of incredible level. I actually looked it up to see. I was like, all right, what does I personally have never spent that on a rent.
Mhm.
What does that get you in Washington, D.C.? It gets you a nice view.
Mhm.
It
Gets you a
does.
splendid looking pad. I mean, as long as you're fine with a 1-story apartment, I guess as long as you don't have kids or family you want to run away from every now and then to hide in the basement or hide upstairs or something. You don't need a garage. It's a strange use of money, but he's an interesting character. When I first started to see him in Washington, D.C., he was a man about town. He was going out. I'd see him at social events. He was always talking. Different TV hosts would come to town. Different members of the Trump family would come to town, and he'd be with them. They'd be chatting it up. Probably, people like to hear about acts of valor, like to hear about soldiering. I wish I had a multi-million-dollar international arms trading company. That'd be a cool business. It'd be a cool conversation point, and it probably typically would make some decent money. But that seems to have faded. Are people turning on him?
Well, I don't think that after we put out a lot of these stories on him, I think that everything started turning, right? Because if you only listen to what he says, you know him as the guy who did the Afghan rescues. He did the Israel rescues. He did some rescues in Haiti.
There's some cool stuff.
And then was out in North Carolina after Hurricane Helene. Everything shifted on February 19th with the alleged assault in this DC penthouse.
You're not supposed to hit live-in girlfriends.
Correct. Yes. Right. And I think that was the first thing. And then it was the House Ethics report.
She said nothing happened after she
recanted.
Said it did. Yeah.
She also let the police listen into the phone call where he was telling her that she needed to change her story. That's all out. I believe that was in the New York Post at the time. So I think that some of the sheen has been wearing off on Cory Mills. Now, he was very close with the Trump family. I don't know that that's necessarily the case anymore. But just from what people hear is Cory, he has a very good way of making you believe what he wants you to believe. But that only lasts for so long, according to all the people that we've spoken to in his life.
Here's why this story is important. I mean, people might say like, well, why are you picking on this Republican congressman? But the problem is that this is not a time for, the grift, the liars, the cheaters. Like, this is time for leadership. And so if someone presents themselves as a leader and then you start poking around the story and you see the craziest things, some of the craziest stuff I've ever seen for anyone in Congress repeatedly, and then these lies, lie after lie, that needs to be called out. We need to clean house on our side. We can't be having this kind of egregious behavior and conduct. And this is a guy who was simply asked, because of the research Jill did, he was simply asked, his comms girl was simply asked, who officiated his wedding and what religion he was. And then he did 50-minute tirade with our own Peter Giedel, calling him a mother effer and basically threatening to sue us for asking those obvious questions. So there's something unhinged about this. And what's crazy to me about this is he actually contacted this. Roger is not this Daily Beast guy is a lib reporter. He's not like a well-known guy. But Mills contacted him to say, with all these excuses of why he couldn't pay his rent because of the failed, website. And then you look into that, and he has to be lying about this as well because it's already gone right to some kind of adjudication or court. So you can't even tell the truth about this. It's at the point where the emperor wears no clothes, and you haven't heard the end of all of this, as you can tell from what Jill is saying and working on.
I mean, it's part of the human condition that we, at least in a trust-based society like we have, that you just want to believe. You assume that people are who they say they are, especially once they get up to the level of Congress. But there is a lot of lying in Washington, D.C. But there's a story in here that I would like this advice for any congressmen who are listening. If you're ever really angry, feeling unhinged, you've been drinking a lot, call me. Don't say off the record. Just shoot me a call. Shoot me a text. No, don't use Signal. Shoot me a text. Call me. Yeah. I'll hop on the phone. I'll talk to you for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Sorry, honey, I got to get up. This senator's calling, and, he's got a lot to say. I'm all open. Reporters want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Chris Bedford is open for business. Whoever wants to call him here in Washington, D.C., get into Bedford's DMs. He'll give you his phone number, and he'll make sure that he has these conversations that are very important that the American people need to know. When we come back, we'll look at a little bit more of the culture in D.C. Raheem Kassam will join us right after this. Well, if you watch The Mandate for a while, you've probably heard of Butterworth. We go through DC's coolest MAGA hangout, and of course, you know the man behind it, Raheem Kassam. But what you might not know is how this place became ground zero for the post-2024 conservative movement. So Raheem joins us now. He's the editor of National Post. So thanks so much for the time and for creating an establishment that we can actually all go hang out at.
You're very welcome, although I have to tell you, having to be there almost 7 nights a week, sometimes 7 nights a week, I kind of sometimes wonder what the heck we've done, because it gets rowdy in there, and it's a good time and it's a late night time, and running a news organization in the day and running a bar at night, I don't think those two things necessarily mix very well.
I think they mix perfectly, but age starts to catch up after a while. It does. The mornings come earlier and earlier.
It'd be great if I could have done this at like 19 years
old.
Yeah, perfect.
So you have so much going on in the political world. We know that for a very long time. So what made you want to get into the restaurant world?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the whole concept in the opening for us was kind of about taking a step back from politics, and it all kind of followed us there, which, you can understand in a city like this where there, 99.5% of places are actively hostile towards conservatives in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. And whether it's, seating you in some crummy seat at the back of the restaurant, or, some politicians, high-profile ones, have been chased out of D.C. restaurants before. And so I fully understand why that whole thing, and being where we are on Capitol Hill, being kind of in this conservative street that is going on right now, or catty corner, there, it works. It almost effortlessly works. My father was in hospitality growing up, so I kind of looked to him for guidance, and I've always kind of wanted to do it. More to the point, I guess, the partners we have, Bart Hutchins and a couple of the other guys who are involved from the outset, are just so good at curating a cool environment with great food, and honestly, it's so lacking here on Capitol Hill.
It is, and that's why you open not too far from our office. I'm there multiple times a week. I don't think I've ever been there at night. Maybe once, because I'm a daytime, because I got young kids and I got to run, but like during the daytime for sure. And it's it's that old school style of actually taking care of you, where The people in there know you. They make an effort to recognize you. They know what you like. They care what you like. They'll tell you the specials, not just because they're remembering something off the list, but hey, actually, I think you're interested in this, and here's something we're working on. And there's interesting stuff, and it's an interesting place to hang out. But one of the things, this is a city where somebody opened up a bar, I think it was like on U Street, that was supposed to be a bipartisan bar. That was it. And they ran it out of business for toleration of fascism, for saying there were Republicans in the city too. And the poor people had to apologize and shutter their doors. And it's a hard place to make an impact. You guys have just fully embraced it in a way that's, obviously a person off the street could walk in and there's no signs on the wall. Right. You might, and there's a lot of girls with tattoos from Brooklyn, like hipster-looking chicks, probably reading like Nietzsche and crazy stuff in the corner, who you wouldn't notice it actually walking in, but it's a welcoming atmosphere. So, but what's it like? I was in the bartending industry for 15 years, and I was a bouncer, bartender, waiter, everything. It's got to be hard to hire people who at least either don't care or are aligned or at least aren't angry about it. I mean, is that how does that go into hiring?
I would honestly love to tell you that all parts of running that place are really difficult and all that, but actually that's not the case. Like the day to day, like as you said, you talk to our staff and they really just care about the place. They care about the customers. They care about
pride
the place,
in it,
and they make my job, right, which is investor owner. My job is just to come and shake people's hands at this point. They make that so easy. But the reason I think, look, there's a couple of reasons that people like to work there. Number one, a lot of the people who work in that industry are necessarily countercultural, right? They think in those terms.
Yeah.
They're rebels. And the left has been the dominant culture for so very long that they actually kind of like the right-wing stuff. They think that is the way to rebel right now. They might not be right-wing in their politics, their policies, whatever, or maybe nothing, right? Like you said. But they kind of dig the fact that there's something countercultural going on there. The other part of it is, DC and the libs who run this city always talking about, living wage and all of this stuff. But they themselves, their restaurants, their bars, their everything, they don't pay living wages. We do. We actually pay people probably twice what they would earn as an hourly rate to go and be a bartender somewhere else in this city. And the third thing is our customers. Our customers tip really well. And so our staff really want to work there. And we get asked from people all over the city, can I work there? Can I pick up a shift? Can I do this? And we never thought that would be the case, right? Coming into this thing and having kind of that MAGA representation in the media. The New York Times magazine has done it, and Axios has done it, and Politico's done it. And it's just saturated.
That was the challenge with writing about you. I got an article coming out in Frontier, and it's going to be a fun piece that goes into this for us in our magazine. But I was probably the 150th reporter who texted you and talked to Bart and said, I'm writing a profile on your restaurant.
That's the hardest part about running the place is giving interview about it constantly. I mean, because they're not just constantly like, hey, what are you doing? How did you do it? All that kind of thing. But it's also, hey, who is in today? What's interesting that's going on? What are you hearing at the bar? And reporters are calling me all the time now, asking me what the scuttlebutt is from the bar at Butterworth. And I say, I could never give up that kind of information. If you want to come and sit at the bar, that's totally different, And so they do. And so now when people say, oh, it's a MAGA place and all of that stuff, we go, actually, if you look around, about 40% of the people in there are either neighborhood or reporter liberals who are trying to figure out what's going on with that stuff.
Oh, liberals want to see it. They're like, this is strange. Because they always thought we were animals.
Do. I think that it's important for us. Like, why are we covering this on the show? Well, it's because it's something that is uniquely different, that you went in, you grabbed a foothold. You didn't know that it was going to become the MAGA spot. No. But here we are right now. And I love it because the last time that we were in town when we were eating there were protesters out on the street, and they were yelling. They had signs. Our investigative reporter, Steve Baker, was with us, and Steve went right up to one of these women, and he's like, listen, if you want to go in, I'll buy your food. The food is really good. You need to go in there. And she's like, that's there. I think she called you fascist. This is where the fascists eat. We can't do that. But like, you can tell that there's something happening when you're here in DC, and there's something that's super conservative, and also the food is so good that everybody that comes in to write a profile about you can't say anything bad because the food is so good.
You know who it reminds me of? Andrew Breitbart. I'm not talking about the company. I'm not talking about the industry. I'm talking about the person who was just fun.
Yeah, really hard to dislike.
Really, really fun. And he's just, one of my voicemail is filled, and one of the things that I will never ever delete is a voicemail from him. He was just fun. He'd put on the roller skates and go out and talk to the protesters. He's like, "What are you guys doing? What are you talking about?" And just, he knew what it was about. He knew it was important about delivering good quality service, good quality food, good quality beverages. But at the same time, he liked to have fun.
Yeah.
And that's what I see at Butterworth.
Yeah, and I think it's authentic as well. The people who are involved in that place are really like actual just fun people. It's not an affectation. You can kind of smell that a mile away, right? When somebody's putting something on, when it's not real. And people come in with us, and yeah, you know what? Sometimes things are out of place, or sometimes we've got all this old Victorian furniture. Sometimes it breaks. Sometimes the candle wax gets everywhere. But it's that kind of authentic eclecticness that I think. Look, I don't speak with an American accent. I'm from a different place. The Europeans are way more into that stuff. And everything in DC kind of became very stale, very glass and fake marble and uncomfortable chairs and all of that. And we came along and did like the complete opposite. It's like walking into your grandma's house, right? And it's comfy and it's cozy. One of the big problems we have is turning the tables over, because people just get so cozy in there at night. They want to hang out all night long. I'm like, I got a line forming at the host stand of people who have reserved tables, and we're trying to move people around and stuff. So
we were one of those groups one night. We promised we'd only stay there for an hour. We're like, we will be out by 7 p.m. for the reservation that has this table. And they were like, sorry, but we have a lot of people to come through. So if you're in Washington, D.C., be sure to make a stop down at Butterworth. And now don't go anywhere, because we have Raheem here. So we're definitely going to pick his brain a little bit more right after this. They say that DC is Hollywood for ugly people, and they're not wrong. Continuing our cultural conversation, Raheem, I just look at this and I look at everybody wants to know what happens in DC. They want to know, what are politicians actually doing day to day? Where do they go? What's the behavior of our elected officials here in this town?
I've been here for 9 years now, and it has convinced me that I would never want to be an elected official, because their days are filled, very clearly filled, with just groveling to whatever industry group or lobby group or PR firm or whatever it is that they're trying, desperately to inculcate within their thing so that they can get another 2 years in office or something like that, right? And it actually doesn't lend to a life of any particular great joy, any particular great spirituality, right? You're just going from place to place, groveling for your tuppence, which just seems to me, it's every problem with American politics, from my perspective, from the outsider perspective, is money oriented, right? It's all of these super PACs, it's all of this dark money. And actually, if you get it out, a lot of the people who are here doing particularly bad jobs would actually give up on it quite quickly and go and do something else. Because this is a town where you can make an enormous amount of money being wildly untalented. Believe me, I've done it.
Not true. But it is true that there has been a sea change here that I think many people who visited since the inauguration, many people in the audience, right, many people on the right are coming back to DC and seeing it in a way that maybe they used to see it a long time ago. It's certainly true for me, right? I remember the moment on a plane, leaving, realizing the depth of the Russia collusion stuff, and just thinking, oh my gosh, like DOJ has fallen. Like this is all the way there. It's clear. And that to me like broke the soul of the place. Sort of like when I go back to California. It's still a foreign country, right? I mean, Gavin Newsom basically says as much. So Washington, D.C. was this for a while. And then it was almost instantaneous after the inauguration. The most remarkable thing happened, which I don't think anyone really saw coming. I mean, people like Chris Bedford likes to say he worked for it. He worked for this culturally here for a long time. You were here during this time. But no one expected to see this rush of cultural energy in the city change and switch. And all of a sudden, if you came and visited, you're going to see all these people you know from throughout the rest of the country, right? Cernovich is having cigars over here, and so-and-so is over here. And the restaurant, Butterworth, is an example of this. But that is remarkable to me and actually exciting because it presents a kind of positive vision of something that's about truth, goodness, and beauty. Because let's face it, there's a very late Roman degeneracy and ugliness to the place. I mean, so you've just walked through this and you're living it almost every night, at the restaurant. Tell us about this.
So you and I have kind of talked about this for years. I remember having this conversation at a dinner in Dallas with you, just casually. We're talking about this, right? The need to have these kind of brick and mortar places. The online right is simply not enough. It's not enough of a place to be. You have to be there in person. You have to look people in the eye. You have to shake hands. We lost so much of that during COVID, especially. And so many people, especially the people who grew up during that, who came of age during that, whose frontal lobes were forming during the pandemic, now don't even necessarily know that they need that in their lives. And you do need it in your lives. And you need to clink glasses, and you need to break bread together. And so I kind of did expect it in a way, because I lived here during the Biden regime. I will never call it an administration. For me, it was always a regime, and it felt like a regime. I live on Capitol Hill, and the day that he was inaugurated, remember, they had militarized the whole city. They did it under the cover of darkness. It did not feel like a democratically elected government was coming to power. It felt like regime change feels in foreign cities, in foreign, third world countries. And so it was such a cultural vacuum. There was no big parties every night during the Biden era. It just didn't happen. There was no cool restaurants opening. There was nothing like that. And so as soon as, for me, the bigger victory to be had in America at that moment after Trump was reelected for the third time was the cultural victory, right? That had to happen. And people like Rick Grinnell instinctively understood that, took over the Kennedy Center and turned it into this powerhouse of real culture. And that isn't to say that we have to put on right-wing shows or anything like that, right? But it's like, hey, why don't we, instead of having drag hours at the Kennedy Center, why aren't we playing Mahler's Sixth? Right? Why aren't we introducing these audiences to that? And when I saw what he was doing there, I went to him and I said, hey, I want Butterworth to be an official restaurant partner of the Kennedy Center and vice versa. So now if you have a Kennedy Center ticket, you can come to Butterworth and get a discount, and they advertise us to all of their members there. And it's this great symbiosis of people who actually, look, I don't care to force you to like a certain thing. I just want you to try it and then make your mind up. And the wonderful thing about the restaurant, by the way, is our people, let's face it, our people are much more used to eating cheeseburgers and hot dogs and steak, right? And there's nothing wrong with any of that. I had a hot dog yesterday, but they're not so used to trying bone marrow and lamb tartare and all of this old world stuff that is more natural and that's been forgotten. So now we get this opportunity to just look, you don't have to like it, but just try it.
I look at Butterworth and the food is phenomenal. It's so good. I just look at, okay, of course people should go out and move to red states. I was definitely a part of that and would support that trend. But when you look at DC, if you don't try and take over places that were so culturally, so systemically leftist, how do you ever expect to make inroads? And I think this is what you guys are doing here with one small footprint that is becoming bigger and bigger. So if you do go through and somehow get into DC, how do you become a normal person, not a swamp creature, and actually survive in Washington, D.C.?
Extremely difficult, because the city is complete, it's all mutual favors and all of this stuff, and people approach you for, with indecent things all of the time. That's just how, and if you don't bend to that will, then they'll try and threaten you to behave a certain way or say a certain thing. I can't tell you the number of times in my writing career, and even with this place, that people come in and try and strong arm you into something for no reason. These people just crave the idea of having some power over you, so, and some hold over you. And I just can't tell you the number of times that I've had to tell people, where to go, to put it in a family-friendly way. And most people come to a city like this and they're not prepared to actually stand up for their values, their morals, their principles, and they will bend and they will compromise. And that's how the whole process happens. That's why it becomes such an ugly place. But look, I'll say this. The other thing is, the reason that we're here on Capitol Hill is not just because the politics of the nation happens here. There is that. It just so happens to be where we're from. Like, I live here now. I've lived here for a decade. Bart's from here. All of the other partners are around here as well. And we've been talking about doing it in red states. We've been talking about doing it in Florida. I would love to do something in California. Now, that would really upset some people.
Oh, yeah.
And we could really bring a scene together. I know other people are doing it as well. You mentioned Cernovich a moment ago. He's putting his club together. And, of course, we've got our great friend from the old Slapfish and Calico. So we need more of it.
Yeah. So what this question that Jill asked reminds me of what I notice is that people are so excited to get together if they're right-leaning here because they're so starved for some kind of normalcy. And that was the party we went to that was called the Doge Appreciation Party. One of the times, right, we were here, you could see the entire movement in this building. You'd go up the stairs, and on each floor there were people, all kinds of people, tech nerds and writers and, just the whole panoply of a winning coalition. And I think part of it is people just want to get together and party. I mean, we're going to go tonight, I should say, so without speaking out of school, we'll be there. And people just want to get together because they want a place where, you can find people who are just vaguely aligned, even though we're probably all going to argue about stuff when we get together, right? And that is astounding to me because it's not just about politics, right? It's also the good food. It's also something that's beautiful, like you said about the Kennedy Center. And if there's any staying sane in the swamp, it would seem these people who are trying to stay, trying to save America have to band together, and more than just politically.
The idea that progressives own aesthetics is ludicrous, and I think people love to come together and prove them otherwise, right? Let's go have an experience together. Let's go see a show. Let's go have a great meal. Those sorts of things are just so important, and you can't get the measure of somebody over text message, over signal. Got to look people in the eyes. And I just love getting people. You should see the types of people who you never thought would be friends. And then they clink some glasses together, and then by the end of the night, they're best buds. That's the best part of it.
The cultural movement is alive and well in Washington, D.C., thanks in part to Raheem Kassam and everybody over at Butterworth. So thanks so much for joining us. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back to wrap up the show right after this. The MLB All-Star Game is coming back to Georgia tonight. We all remember this game was wrongly taken away from that state back in 2021. Of course, they passed the racist election integrity laws. It was, of course, had to go through and affect all the black people. We couldn't have an MLB All-Star Game. So now sanity has prevailed, and the All-Star Game is back in Georgia, you guys. So I want to look at this, not even just from the MLB perspective, but just from the cultural changes that we have seen from the crazy times in COVID and the election integrity laws to where we see ourselves right now.
Yeah, it's wild because when you just look back on this now, I mean, at least for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people out there, you remember the ferment, the fervor, the insanity of the entire argument in Georgia, which was that passing election integrity law, that you couldn't, bribe people and give them free stuff on their way into, on their way in to vote and whatnot. I mean, that was this kind of stuff like this was in the laws, like common sense, a lot of it, stuff that's, already in place in other states. And somehow all of that was racist because it would prevent black people from voting because they're incapable of voting without, being handed water in line or whatever. I mean, this was crazy. And to say that because of that law about how you vote, which had nothing to do with racial anything, then means that you can't have a baseball game, in that state. I mean, I feel like we are over this, but then again, my head says we're not because a lot of these people are still in charge, in Georgia and elsewhere. But the fact that you have a representative from Georgia, right, Barry Loudermilk, shouting this out is a good thing.
Yeah, and he put on X last week. He said the last minute decision costs the state of Georgia and businesses approximately $100 million. So he goes, now the best part about it is elections, the bill in Georgia makes it easy to vote and hard to cheat law is now actually there in place. So he's like, okay, what are we even doing that we took this away from them in the first place and caused $100 million to just slip away from the economy there?
It was awful. In Atlanta, Georgia, that's a place that's got almost 12% Black-owned businesses in that metro area, which is the third highest in the country. New York City, obviously, has the most. Washington, D.C. has, I think, like 35%. But that's double Memphis. That's double Augusta. That's double a lot of places that are historically known as Black cities. And those are the businesses that were really hurt in the Atlanta economy. They moved it to Denver, Colorado, which has like 1.6% Black-owned businesses comparatively. And this is just one of the so many examples what the very right Reverend Al Sharpton called latte liberals. These white people who came in 2020 completely armed with moral rights system that made decisions over and over and over again that hurt Black people. Completely insane. Washington, D.C. was filled with these folks singing aging boomer hippies, singing civil rights songs like they were marching across a bridge against Bull Connor, which was just completely psychotic about the Voting Rights Act, about this, about that, about trying to crack down on cheating. None of that ended up to be the case. Black businesses were hurt. And, you know, in Washington, D.C. at the time, I lived in a neighborhood that was a mixture of Black and white, and there was a mixture of poor and middle class with a couple of upper class people there. And the decisions that white liberals made and their friends on the city council hurt that neighborhood dramatically. There was flight to Old Town, to Northern Virginia, to Maryland. People left because the crime skyrocketed. And guess what? That didn't really impact the white liberals that much. It really impacted the poor Black voters. And that was in my neighborhood where crime skyrocketed, where a woman got hit by a stray bullet while pushing a baby stroller with her little baby in it. And what was it? And on Independence Avenue in Washington, D.C. Now you go across the river to the neighborhoods where there's very few white people living, and that place became a war zone. Little girls and little boys, 5 and 6 years old, were killed. It was awful.
No, it's. I mean, I just hope. I hope that moment's passed. I hope that moment's passed. But we have to say, before we leave this fair city, it's been the weather's been classic swampy weather, but not bad, not terrible.
We're getting there are nightly storms to kind of cool it down.
Yeah,
and make it more humid.
Yeah. At least here,
My hair loves it.
At least it fluctuates here, right? Dallas will do this thing where
It gets hot and stays hot forever.
California would never do this. It's hot and it just stays the same temperature. It's like, oh, it's night, it'll get cooler. Nope. No, it won't. No, it'll just stay the same.
I laugh at people here. They're like, "Oh, it's so hot here," and I was like, "Oh, really? Great."
Yeah, that's a Dallas line. Like, oh, is it hot?
Yeah, but Dallas people are ready for it. Like, you guys have air-conditioned parking garages, air-conditioned garages. You drive from air conditioning to air conditioning. People don't go outside in Texas, like at least in the cities. Washington, D.C. it's a walk-in city, which is why, it's hard to buy a suit when you're a guy around here.
Well, we appreciate you letting us back in your city, even for a few days.
Am I not merciful?
You are. You're a merciful leader. Matt and I have to head back to Dallas. So that's going to do it for us here in our trip to Washington, D.C. Thank you one more time.
Come back soon.
We will. Everybody have a good night out there, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.